Hey friend, sounds like we just got some tough news. Tell you what, right after I got my diagnosis, one of my favorite human beings threw me in their car and drove me out to the lake to distract me, get me away from other people. So let's do the same here. We are at one of my all time favorite spots. So let's just pretend it's you and me having a conversation. I've been living with HIV for 10 years. I will admit, not everyone's experience is the same, but I'm going to open up a little bit about mine. Hopefully, there's some similarities there that can provide some experience and hopefully a little bit of hope and perspective. First off, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. It's different for everyone. Sometimes there's anger, sadness, shock, disbelief. For me, after I heard the words, your HIV test came back positive, my brain kind of shut down. If I'm being completely honest, I don't remember much of anything about that appointment after I heard those words. I do remember trying to decide where to stare while my provider was talking because I couldn't make eye contact. Uh, Her eyes were filling up with tears, and I couldn't handle crying in that room. So, yeah, after I got my news, I called a trusted friend, somebody I knew who loved me unconditionally. I'm really lucky in that department because they dropped what they were doing and distracted me for a while, so my brain could process it. We didn't talk about HIV. We didn't talk about the ramifications. We were just human together for a while, and for me, that had some value. You have time to figure out what you're going to do next and how you're going to handle this thing. You can't solve everything at once. If you need to have your moment and be angry and throw something, or kind of check out and watch bad reality TV, it's all good. There's not a right or wrong response to that kind of news. So, yeah, however you're feeling is valid. And if it doesn't seem rational, that's also valid. There is no right or wrong here. Let me start with the most simple stuff. HIV is not a death sentence, it's not even a sickness sentence. The majority of us living with HIV are just as healthy as anybody. I, when I'm not doing this kind of thing or taking my meds, I honestly forget I have it. I have so many friends who all just casually drop into conversation something about HIV, and they have to stop me and be like, "Wait, you have HIV?" And I assume I've told them because it's just a background part of my life. Uh, it's not a big deal. It's it's another thing that is part of my existence. It's not the hardest thing by far. Um, Work, relationships, all that stuff. Living with HIV, it's not as difficult as I expected. It's just kind of background noise. All right, so take a breath. We're going to have more conversation. We're going to chat a little bit more. Hopefully, I answer some questions you have. I had a lot of questions, and I didn't have anybody to answer them for me because I was the only person I knew with HIV. I got lucky later and have a great community now. But when I first found out, that's really what I wanted, somebody to answer my questions and let me know I wasn't the only person in the world going through this. All right, we'll chat more. In the meantime, take a breath, enjoy the scenery. It's going to be okay. All right, let's talk next steps. First off, do yourself a favor. Take care of the priorities. And again, not everything needs to be solved today or tomorrow. There's some really basic stuff that's going to be helpful. Worry about getting that done. All that, who am I going to tell? What's dating going to be like? Am I going to get sick? I promise that stuff will work itself out eventually. In the meantime, we have a new diagnosis. We have a new health condition that we need to do something about. The good news is the resources exist for most folks. Far more resources, actually, than I would have expected. Here's where I would start. Most likely, the doctor that gave you your diagnosis send in some kind of referral to an community health center or a specialized HIV provider, whatever it is. Show up to that first appointment. Uh, you don't have to be in a good mood. You don't have to smile. You don't have to make their day. What you do have to do is show up to your appointment. During that appointment, they're all going to be different. But what I will tell you is they can be overwhelming. When you go to your first HIV medical provider, they're going to talk about medications that you've probably never heard of. Let me tell you the good news: medications these days are amazing. The pill I take every day, it's literally the size of a Tic Tac. It doesn't have any side effects. Honestly, my multivitamin is a much bigger pain than my HIV medications. And that's pretty standard, right? The They're going to ask you a bunch of questions. Some of them are going to be awkward. A lot of us have not had conversations with strangers about our sex life or if we share needles with people. But these are going to come up, and you can be honest. The people you're meeting, they're your team now, right? They're family. And this is what they do. Nothing you say is going to shock them. I can almost promise. So we show up to our first appointments. There's the medical piece. They're going to draw labs. They're going to see what all that looks like. You're probably also going to meet with a case manager. That may be at the same place or a different one. They are going to ask you all sorts of questions. There's going to be an intimidating amount of paperwork. That appointment's probably going to be pretty long. Expect at least an hour and a half. I'm telling you this so when it goes long, you don't think it's because you're weird or unstandard somehow. It's pretty normal. The cool thing is when you do meet with your case manager, they're going to amass a huge pile of resources. They're going to make sure you're insured. They're going to take advantages of programs specifically for people with HIV to make sure you can get your meds. They're going to make sure you are coordinated with a medical provider if you weren't already. For me, this was my go-to person. Absolutely my go-to person early into my diagnosis, because it was the only person I'd ever actually talked to about how I was feeling about living with HIV. So show up, be ready for a lot of paperwork, be ready for what's probably a long appointment. And another reminder, I I can almost guarantee that no one has had a more awkward, shocking story than you. So open up, get to know them, do all the annoying things. It will be worth it. If somebody had given me one wish after I got my diagnosis, and it sounds so strange, but I also promise you it's not a unique experience for me. You may be experiencing it as well. I mean, sure, I didn't want to get sick, I didn't want to die, like all that practical stuff, sure. But when you get a diagnosis that is both pretty rare and a lot stigmatized, it is really easy to feel like you now live in a bubble all by yourself. Most of us don't thrive in that situation. The good news is there are communities of people living with HIV who've worked through their own fear, their own guilt, their own shame, recognizing that they are just people with a health condition, uh, and they support one another, and it's amazing. It took me way too long to get brave enough to find my community. I lived essentially in the closet for years until somebody kindly tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, come be a part of this." It changed my life. It changed how I relate to HIV and to myself. It is what allowed me to shed that stigma I had about my own diagnosis. I wish I had done it earlier. I really can't suggest it any more than that. So we have some options. Um, there are countless online groups, chat forums. Some of them are anonymous. Some of them you can get really detailed about who you are. There are advocacy groups, people who fight for the rights of people living with HIV. They're wonderful as well, and they're everywhere. You could probably ask your case manager about some of either of these options. We are remarkably lucky. It is a time in history where there is literally an app for everything. HIV, living with HIV is no different. At this point, we have a few pretty excellent options for folks, um, where you can connect directly with your community. And the really cool thing is you can choose how much anonymity you want in those settings. Some of these apps have providers in them as well. Some are only people living with HIV. That's up to you, right? And what you want your community to look like. I'll go into a little bit more detail about some options for community and connection. But for this chat, I just want to make sure you know community is essential. When you are living with HIV, loneliness can be fatal. The best medicine for that is finding your squad, finding your people. Do it. As soon as you are comfortable enough saying the words out loud, venture into those waters. It's worth it. It did, in fact, change my life. All right, we're about to move on, but again, you're doing an incredible job, and I'm super proud of you.